Thursday, October 29th. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Andrew Pont?
Here.
Mr. Brame?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mrs. Griffin?
Present.
Mr. Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Hassan?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Dr. Mackey?
Present.
President McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Spell? Mr. Stelly?
Here.
Mr. Sias?
Present.
Mrs. Trimmy? Here. And Chairman Farnham.
Present.
Everyone's present.
Item number 3, appearance of Mr. Woodard Booty with reference to salvinia and debris in waterways. Willard Booty. Please state your name and address and
I'm Willard Booty. I live at 1191 Highway 27 North in DeQuincy. I'd like to say, first of all, it's a privilege I'm glad that you allowed me to come meet before you. I thought I was meeting before with Hal and Mr. Spell and Bobby Reed tonight, but I got here and saw my name on the thing. I won't take any more time than I could possibly have to. I was a principal and teacher for 31 years really in the parish. I've been in the logging business 22 years, and I've been semi-pro, call it what you like. Everybody knows me as being a fisherman. I fished a lot of pro tournaments from a little nervous. I hadn't done this in about 22 years.
Take your time.
I fished pro tournaments from Florida to the Potomac, and I've seen a lot of lakes and rivers, and there's one thing happening in our area that really has me disturbed. I've been referred to as a jackass bass fisherman, pardon the expression, but I'm proud. I am the oldest person to ever win one of Ray Scott's Bassmaster tournaments, and that's on record. So I'm proud of that at least. But I happen to teach one of your honorable members, and I don't know that he wants me to call his name, but if you look over here about three from me, well, there he is.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say he wasn't too nervous when he was using that paddle on my rear end.
Hal, I wasn't going to bring that up, but I will admit to being guilty. But look what a fine young man he is compared to me. This is concerning what I've seen since Rita, mainly, in our area. I've been on the rivers. I moved to this parish, and I've been a resident for 52 years. I taught school at Gillis, Moss Bluff, Westlake, and principal in DeQuincy for several years. And I've been on the rivers and the waterways since 57, which is 52 years. I've been a very active member since about 1970. What I've seen, I hear people living on the river say, well, the river's washing away and the banks are washing away and this, that, and the other. But on the West Fork and Houston River, for instance, I've seen very little washing away of the rivers. Now, since Rita, the fish have come back. They were gone for a year. They've come back. But Sylvania has appeared in force. I was on the river fishing a tournament, talked to Mr. Spell, my son Kevin, and I talked to Mr. Spell over one of the tournaments, a little tournament we have. That's part of our pleasure. But anyway, we had to push with a 150 horse motor is all you could do to push through it from the lower end of Sam Houston State Park to the upper end. And then it was spots. Okay, there's lumber, there's trash, there's everything. Someone told me a while ago might be a body floating in that stuff. You can't up and run on it. I was at a Westlake, wasn't Hal's class, reunion at Steve Abear's at the old Matheson property. You know where that is in Westlake. The river was solid from there down as far as you could see and all the way to the park. That's what it's doing. It's become a real problem for safety. It's restricting the use of our waterways. If you run a boat up Houston River, you can get up to about Anthony Ferry, and that's the end of it. It's crisscross logs, tops, you name it, from there on up toward Sulphur Bridge. The West Fork has trees all the way out in the center of it. Now, some good citizens have marked part of them, and some boats have broken parts of them off, but they're sticking out there in the river. I see it restricting our waterways this evening when I drove down at West Houston River Bridge. There's lily pads and everything else floating, and they're hanging against these trees I know it's restricting some of our drainage. It's discouraging people from using our waterways. I've seen a lot less use since Rita. In fact, almost none since Rita appeared, and it tore my house up too. So I have memories of that, plus 4 bypasses and throat surgery that same year. So I had one of those years. It's become a problem. If people can't use it for recreation, our waterways and whatever, I know the people on the bank they're happy that no one can use it. But it cuts back on revenues and everything else, and I'll throw this in. I'm glad to see what happened, or is going to happen over at Moss Bluff, the new park and boat launch. I've talked to Mr. Bobby Reed, and he said that they're spraying 24/7 in the state. I remember Toledo Bend a few years back when it first appeared, and everyone went berserk because it was taking Toledo Bend. I saw them with boats and fire hose-sized hoses spraying the waters and all the way up on the banks to get rid of it. It killed the natural growth that was in the lake, and it killed it for a while. But I was up there 2 weeks ago, and it's floating all over Negrete Creek area, if you know where that is. If you go on the downwind side, or the way the wind's blowing, every little cove is full of it. It's solid. So it's back on Toledo. I've noticed it here basically the last year. It's filled up marshes. It's filled up canals that I know about up the West Fork, up Houston River, and it floats in and out. But it's filled them completely full. You can't even go in them with a boat. It's too heavy. You can't push it. It'll jam your motor up. Now, I've been told that they've been spraying everywhere as much as they could. I think it was 10 teams. It's on the state level. It's been spraying, and they can't keep up with it. I was told that 2 things would possibly help us in our area. Now, it doesn't grow in salt water, so we're happy for that. But below 18 degrees freeze will kill it temporarily, and a flood to push it out to salt water. That's 2 choices we have. Now, my concern is, I'm asking, I don't know how many of you were aware of this problem. That's why I'm here, to make you aware of it, and what happens is up to you. But on our river system, it's just taking over that. And I had an important point to make, and I'm 73 years old, and I forgot it. So if I think of it in a minute, I'll throw it back at you. But anyway, the lily pads, it's holding things and not letting them move down the river in a natural fashion. And if you go up the Houston River, you better not get that boat on top, because you're going to take a lower unit off of it. There's places that you can barely go between treetops. Oh, that's it. I noticed that Indian Bow was cleaned out down by Parkside Marina by Sam Houston Park entrance. It was cleaned, and they took the logs and trees, and I don't know what they did with them, but they disposed of them. I don't know whether they used it for energy reasons or burned them or what. But my question is is there any possibility that some of the dangerous ones could at least be taken out of the West Fork and Houston River? And hopefully help this stuff get out of here and into salt water where it'll die. I don't know any other reason.
Mr. Booty, we have 2 or 3 people here, I believe, to talk about this subject. If you'd like to get some answers from, maybe they got something to enlighten you with.
Well,
Mr. Reed, Mr. Savoy, and Mr. Bordeaux, are they present? If they'd like, y'all like to come up to the microphone and maybe make some comments of it, and then we can bring you back up.
yeah, I was told that that things, something to do with funds. In other words, this happened as a result partly of Rita. I thought there might be some kind of fund somewhere that we could get a grant or something and do something with some of this, but it's happened since Rita.
State your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Kevin Savoy. I'm with LSU Ag Center and Sea Grant Programs. I'm housed here at the Calcasieu office. Don't know a lot of, I mean, you folks probably don't know me. I know most of you and work with a lot of your staff. But the problem that Mr. Booty is talking about, we've been aware of for quite some time here in Louisiana. This is an invasive species, and typical of most invasive species, whenever they show up in an environment, they usually show up without competition or without the pests that control them in whatever country they come from. And this plant is from South America originally. It's been here for quite a while. LSU Ag Center has done a lot of work with this plant in trying to control it. We've developed herbicide recommendations. We've made weevil releases. We've done research projects which look at salinity tolerances. And as bad as the salinity problem is on the river, if you can imagine it, giant salvinia is even worse. And that's made its appearance recently in this area as well. There was an infestation a few years ago in Cameron that I was involved with, and they sprayed that plant with herbicide for almost 2 years and never got total control. We made weevil releases into it and never saw a whole lot of control from it either because the weevils were not surviving our winter. There have been weevils brought in from other parts of the world and other parts of the country that will feed on giant salvinia, and there are releases going on now. We made some releases several years ago in the Moss Bluff area at Cypress Lake. That, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's about a 60-acre lake. It was completely covered. We made several releases in there. The first one, they did not survive the winter. The next release was eaten by fire ants. That growth was so thick that the fire ants trailed out over that stand of common salvinia and foraged on our weevils that we released. That infestation is under control now through a small moth called Samia multiplicalis. It showed up here probably with the common salvinia, and populations built up. And it's been seen in other areas, in the Laxine area, Laxine Bayou, and in the Mermentau River. And when it shows up, the problem with that insect is it eats itself out of existence. The populations just explode and they wipe out their food source, and then they crash. Then the salvinia comes back. But at some point, a lot of folks really believe, and I do too, that there's going to be some type of natural control that shows up, and periodically we are going to have problems. But along with spraying, which is what Bobby's crews are doing, we're going to have these large growths. This plant grows really fast at this time of year. When we reach overnight temperatures in the 60s, daytime temperatures get up around 80. It'll double every 5 to 7 days. It's just really growing fast. It's a really tough plant to control. There's no easy answers for it.
Do we have any questions? Mr. Scott.
As far as the debris in the rivers or whatever, would that, if that wasn't there, would that help it move or no? How does that?
I really don't know. That plant doesn't do well in open water areas. Rivers are great for it because it's got the protection of the trees. It floats. It floats on the surface. It's not rooted. With rivers with a lot of flow, it's usually not a problem. The backwater areas, swampy areas, little drain laterals, old timber drags, which we have a lot of on the Calcasieu, it'll grow back under those areas. Then when we get a big rain, it brings them out. It brings those plants out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Anderpont.
Since we've been blessed with this infestation, where in the world did it come from to begin with?
It's originally from South America, Brazil. It showed up in Florida back in the 1920s or 30s. Made its way here in the early 1980s. Toledo Bend's got a giant salvinia problem. Been there for a while. That's it for me.
Thank you. Mr. Reed, do you have anything to add?
I'm Bobby Reed with the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. I'm stationed over here at 1213 North Lakeshore Drive. My agency is the primary agency responsible for control of aquatic weeds in our natural waterways, primarily from the standpoint of public access, fishing access. As Kevin mentioned, this plant has been in the U.S. for quite some time, but only in the last 25 or 30 years has it finally made its way over here. We saw a similar outbreak and infestation exactly 10 years ago on the Mermentau River, where it completely choked it. As Mr. Booty mentioned, probably one of the best methods of control is natural. It's freeze time, and we have not had good freezes since the winters of '84 and the winter of '89. All the other winters just haven't been effective. If you look at the distribution of this plant in Louisiana, when you get up near the Arkansas border, it stops simply because their winter temperatures routinely get down to 15 degrees or so each year. Down in the southern part of Louisiana, we're in a semi-tropical environment. And this plant, being from Brazil, it thrives at our environmental temperatures that we have around here. My agency's, I guess for lack of better terminology, aquatic spray program evolved over the years, starting in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And at that time, we were combating things like water hyacinth, alligator weed, plants that were much larger, a lot easier to kill. You bring the two species of salvinia into the mix, the common salvinia, the giant salvinia. Suddenly you're dealing with a little plant that's a floater, reproduces very rapidly. It's a hard target to hit. You can spray the river all day long. The next day the wind shifts or you get a flush of rain, and you got a brand new population that comes from the backwater areas back out, and it's almost like you're back at square zero. It's very frustrating. My agency is spending anywhere between $2 and $3 million a year on herbicides and teams out there spraying. We have a lot of waterways here in southwest Louisiana. I have 2 teams to patrol and spray all our rivers. Right now we're under a hiring freeze at the state level. My agency at this time has 9 different vacancies of spray teams around the state that we're unable to fill right now. We're hoping that if enough public raises concern that they'll see the light, and we'll be able, we were scheduled to add a 3rd team to each district. This past year it didn't happen. Of more immediate concern is how this stuff is spread. Fishermen and their boat trailers can spread it long distances quite rapidly from one tournament to the next. Fishermen don't like to admit they spread aquatic invasives, but they're one of the primary causes. So we've got signage up at boat ramps, and it's entitled Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers. And the folks, if they would read the signs, clean their trailers, take these steps, it would be a great help. On a local level, dispersal mechanisms include floods, wind, tidal action, but probably the greatest distributor of this plant are animals themselves. Beaver, nutria, turtles, alligators, anything that drags through the swamp, this plant sticks to its fur and goes on a ride. If you've got a nice pond a mile away, an otter can make one trip across the pasture with salvinia on his back, and you got it in your pond. And then you call me, where did this come from? Animals are the ones that are spreading it the most, and we can't simply control those. But my agency is charged with the spraying activities. We take the research that Kevin's shop comes out with, and we take those chemicals and apply them and try to find the best techniques to control them. But it is a hard target.
If you'll hang on just a second, Mr. Stelling might have a question for you.
Talking about the plants, I understand it's a real bad thing. I experienced that. Where the stuff gathers in these spots, can't you remove it with barges and heavy equipment to grab it out of there and take it out?
That was attempted years ago in Florida, and
in the places that Mr. Booty was talking about, though, where it's really choking these areas up, wouldn't it be beneficial to go in there and get it out as opposed to spraying it and waiting for it to die?
well, you could get right into the edge of the backwater there, but then how are you going to get way back in the swamp where it's protected by cypress trees or in somebody's duck pond?
Well,
We can't spray private lands. My agency only sprays public waters.
Okay. Going to another subject, the abandoned boats and houseboats and everything that are up against the banks that are breaking up little by little and putting debris in the rivers, that's part of this problem right here. Who is actually responsible for cleaning that up?
I'm not sure which agency is charged with that.
It is a state agency, though, right?
I don't know. I've never heard. And I know my agency's not charged with that.
Does anybody, Mark or Alan, do y'all know who's responsible for that? Because you know where all of the, Mr. Booty was talking about, where all those trees are, the branches and all the debris is holding that stuff up. Because I can tell you, it's all up and down the river.
I'm
up and down there all
aware
the
of it.
time.
I'm aware of it.
And that's what's doing it. So I think, you know, the problems are gathering up, but the problems where it's beginning is not being taken care of. And I think that's what the problem is.
And I realize that the storms have put a lot of timber down.
There's no trees have been cleaned up on the river since Rita.
Well,
And I'm not saying your office is responsible. Some
well,
of it is responsible.
our position is that if it occurs naturally and falls in a natural waterway, then it's a natural process. We're probably not going to remove it. It provides fish habitat. It provides substrate for different plants to actually grow onto that are beneficial. And if it's a scenic waterway like Hickory and Beckwith Creek or Calcasieu above Ward 8 Park, the scenic stream law prohibits the snagging and removal of any debris that falls naturally into the river.
But there's some areas beyond Ward 8 that has boat traffic and stuff. I'm talking about heavy boat traffic, barges and stuff like that, and there's a lot of trees that are down that haven't been picked up.
And I'm not sure who's ultimately responsible for some of the navigation efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some years ago, and I don't know if we're still doing this or not, but up in, I guess it was Public Works on the east side, they had that roadside wildflower program, and y'all were raising the, are y'all still doing that, Mr. Wainwright?
Yes, sir. This year wasn't a banner year for the program, but we hope for better next year.
Yeah. That kind of made me think about, why can't you grow moss? The moss that they talked about earlier that did so well. I mean, and then they die in the winter, he said. Why couldn't, and maybe not us, but you know, why couldn't the Ag Center or somebody breed those things and release them every year? Could that be done? Or who could answer that question? Maybe they've already tried that. I don't know.
No, that moth has not been grown in captivity. It occurs naturally. It's out there. Whenever we get these huge stands of common salvinia, typically in the spring, is when we see this moth population explode. And it's very short term, but it does a great job. It knocks it back. But no, that moth has not been.
But then do they go away? I mean, evidently they don't go away altogether because you see them
all
again.
together, but they just about eat themselves out of existence. They eat up all the salvinia, and their population crashes. There's just a few of them that survive.
I mean, to me, if that works so well, I mean, you know, how much could that cost versus how many millions of dollars of herbicide that you're spending and it's still not getting the job done? And there's a hiring freeze. Hey, just hire one guy and have him breed moss all day. I mean, just seems like that would make sense. Thank you.
Mr. Bordeaux, would you come to the mic and state your name and address?
Norman Bordeaux, 1101 Tomahawk Drive, Moss Bluff. The operations manager for the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness for the police jury. I believe I can address some of the questions that have arisen this evening regarding waterway debris. I believe the most recent question was who is responsible for the removal of that. Actually, there's a large partnership between local, state, and federal agencies. The vessels that were just recently mentioned, that is falling underneath a mission that has been assigned to the U.S. Coast Guard. Those vessels have been surveyed, identified, and the ones that are determined to be from Hurricane Rita are what they consider mission applicable. Contracts have been let, and some of those vessels have been removed from our waterways already. There are additional ones that are in the process of being removed at this time. In addition to that, we also have what the Coast Guard went out and surveyed a lot of the waterways where we have debris from Rita, the trees and things that were mentioned. Those in areas that were outside of the Coast Guard's responsibility initially was going to fall to the Department of NRCS Natural Resources Conservation Service, and we have a couple of gentlemen here this evening. They are a federal agency with unfortunately limited funding, and were not able to assist us in that task. So after that information was received by them, our next step now is a cooperation, again, between local, state, and federal agencies, where this is going to be potentially funded through FEMA for some of these at 100%. No cost to the police jury or the district. And in this case, it would be the Gravity Drainage District who would be the applicant, and it would be an applicant-managed project worksheet that would be written with FEMA. There will be assessments done in these areas and eligibility determined. And then as areas are determined to be eligible, contracts let, and then work would proceed. The area that Mr. Booty had mentioned earlier, on Indian Bayou, there's potentially two, and I'm not sure which agency. It may have been NRCS that actually had funding early on, and they may have been the ones responsible for clearing that area. It may have been Gravity District number 8. They've been doing a lot of work up in their district also with their own funds and their own personnel. So I'm not sure who is responsible for the clearing of that area. But we have been in contact for quite some time with all the drainage districts within the parish, and we've asked them, and they've identified quite well their areas of concern that still have debris. We're aware of that. The state is aware of that. FEMA is aware of those. And we just had another meeting again today. We're meeting on a regular basis, to develop, a firm plan to move forward on these and to address these in as timely a fashion as we possibly can.
We have another question, President McMillan.
Not really a question, but I just wanted to kind of say that Bobby Reed, who's been with the Wildlife and Fisheries and his spraying program, I have a lot of problems back in the Back Bay subdivision off Caton Road that I've called Bobby 10 different times, and he's always been there. So they are trying to address this problem as quickly as they can and do what they can with the spray application that they have. And there's just no real easy solution for this problem other than the possibility of a freeze or maybe a flood to wash some of that out. And of course, the debris aspect, I know you're working very hard on that. One of the things that we could ask for on this jury is a resolution of support and asking our state agencies to look at the possibility of funding this program and maybe hiring some people to help out Calcasieu Parish. I mean, that resolution may be something we want to look at, but really we're in a situation that our hands are almost tied to solve the problem, but we can try to fight it as much as we can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Trimming.
Thank you. I want to thank my friend Willard Booty that he's been there 52 years, and I've been there that long too. in DeQuincy and then this area. But I want to, Norman, if you would mind coming back.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank Willard for coming and making us aware of the situation that not all of us were aware of. And not everyone in Calcasieu Parish was aware of. That's why it's so good to have citizens this thoughtful to make the effort to come here and to educate our public. But I want to thank LSU and also Wildlife and Fisheries for being here tonight and giving us all the information that you have. But Norman, it seems like you have a little more knowledge and a little better control of what we're doing right now to try to clean these waterways. And I realize that it's going to take time, but from what you're saying right now, we're getting closer to making the decisions of when, where, and how. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay, and when I'm saying closer, within a year or less, hopefully?
Some are difficult to get an exact time frame on. You know, with the abandoned vessels that we know are there and have been identified, you know, a second batch will be removed in the near future. We work with the planning department to do the advertisements for these abandoned vessels as a requirement by the state and also through the federal government. That has already been completed. Today was the end of the 30-day period, so the Coast Guard is going to be able to move forward with the next batch of those vessels. Now, in regards to the debris, I know you have a particular area of concern in your district. Actually, there's a number of them. You know, we're talking with the representative from the district up there. Those, several of those were discussed actually in today's meeting, and we have anticipated being able to schedule a meeting to do some walkthroughs on that area next week to help determine eligibility. There'll be a state representative there, representative from the state, I should say, a FEMA representative, and also a representative from the district, Mr. Shahanik, I believe it is.
Yes.
Will be present to walk some of those areas of Bearhead Creek to determine eligibility on that.
Thank you.
And also up in Ward 1, we're working with Mr. Rayon up there. We also have a meeting scheduled to do 2 area surveys on Monday, which they're going to get some canoes in the water, do some assessments there. Overall, on this particular project, if I had to do some initial estimates, I'd say by the time we get to the end of next year, we would be really moving along quite well through this, and with any hopes be wrapped up with anything that can be considered eligible, contracts let, and work done would be my hopes on this.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you for your information, and thank you for helping each one of us on this jury in our areas and taking it as a real challenge, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions and comments. I'll try to be as brief as possible, but first I want to thank Mr. Savoy and Mr. Reed. Thank y'all for being here and providing that information. We know you're fighting an uphill battle. We appreciate what y'all do. Question that I would ask either for Mr. Savoy or Mr. Reed, any residents that are seeing this or citizens like Mr. Booty that experience this problem with the Salvinia, do they call Wildlife and Fisheries? Do they call us? I mean, what is the best thing for citizens to do when they recognize this problem as far as contacting someone to bring awareness to it?
Yes, Mr. Spell, they call my office. They call me. We log in the call. We try to get the best directions that we can to the complaint areas. We make a determination whether it's in public or private waters. If it's in public waters, then I forward that request on to my field teams and the supervisor. It's a first come, first serve, and you know, they, for instance, they try to tackle a lot of jobs on one side of the district at a time. They may not just shut down here and go all the way to the other side just to do one little 2-hour job. What they try to do is they try to get several jobs in the area so that they're pretty much out there all day or a whole week working on that one area. But yes, they do call us at the office there. We're listed under Louisiana State Government, and I think my number is the first one in the phone book under Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries.
That would be 4912577. I've called it enough to know it.
Thanks, Al.
If you get constituents called with that problem, solve any problem on private property, I feel those calls almost daily. And we can give them herbicide recommendations or control methods.
Okay. Once again, Mr. Reed, Mr. Savoy, thank you. I guess the next question would be for Norman. The Indian Bayou project in Ward 1, it was a combination NRCS, FEMA funding, and district activity. The priority behind that project was to clean out debris from Indian Bayou to improve drainage. But something that we noticed was it also ejected quite a bit of salvinia after the project was finished because the flow in the bayou was much better. And although I do recognize Mr. Booty's concerns with its effect towards recreation, the question as far as the West Fork, you had mentioned that we have districts, drainage districts, that look at, alleviating debris problems. Well, what do we do in a case of the West Fork where it's kind of a common water body that is, used by a region, not just a district? What steps do we need to take to seek clean out of that waterway, since it doesn't really fall under the purview of any one specific district?
That was one item that came up in today's meeting. Being those are technically waters of the state and do not fall underneath, as a drainage district would say, within their responsibilities. That's something we're going to have to look at and attempt to address. We're not quite sure. Technically, those would fall underneath the U.S. Corps of Engineers. So we may have to consider seeing what options we may have through that. Also, in addition, possibly, we had talked about being districts normally split their boundaries in the middle of a waterway. We may have to do some sort of cooperative endeavor agreement between the districts to work on both sides, so to speak, hopefully simultaneously. And but that is an area of concern that we're going to have to try to work through and see the best way to address those particular areas.
Well, Norman, I know that y'all are working on Marsh Bayou, which is in the Topsy-Gillis area, and the upper reach of Indian Bayou, and I know the work and effort that y'all are putting in behind the scenes on this, so I just want to express my thanks and appreciation of what y'all are doing, and anything y'all need from this body, we'd definitely like to assist in any way we can. But I want to thank you for your efforts. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank Mr. Booty and echo Ms. Tremmy's sentiment. Mr. Booty, thank you for being here. Your voice. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
But thank you, Norman and Mr. Booty. We just appreciate you being here and appreciate your voice. And thank you very much for sharing. And no need to be nervous. You did a great job. So thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Excuse me. I used to hold Hal after class sometimes, so just one sec. My main concern was to bring it before, to be sure everyone knew about it. And if you drive up to Sam Houston State Park, I think Hal met with some from the state the other day on the activities in the park. If you drive up there, unless it's washed it out, the river is solid. And my concern is a lot of those trees that's up Houston River mainly and West Fork. You have to be crazy if you run a boat up through there, which I've been guilty of doing. Thank you very much for allowing me to come, and I appreciate the work that y'all do. I'm going to skip out and try to get ahead of that rain to DeQuincy.
Be careful.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, Mr. Reed, if I can get you to come answer two more quick questions for me, and just helps kind of, how big of an area does your office cover? I mean, which area?
I'm in District 5. It covers the 6 parishes in southwest Louisiana. I've got Vernon, Beauregard, Calcasieu, Cameron, Jeff Davis, and Allen.
And when you said 2 to 3 million, that's just for that district that you have to cover the whole district?
No, that's for the whole state.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. Yeah, see, that changes the problem to a bigger problem. which, Mr. Booty, I do appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Reed. I do appreciate you coming.
Hold up one second. We got a couple more questions.
I do appreciate you coming, Mr. Booty, because, when there's a problem, the first thing you have to do is be aware of it. You got to educate people in order to get a plan together to get some progress. So I do thank you, and I thank y'all for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in agreement with Mr. McMillan. He asked for a resolution. I'd like to put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second of a resolution of support.
That is correct.
Under discussion, one quick question.
Under discussion, Mr. McMillan.
2 to 3 million's total budget. About how much money do you spend here in our area, or in your district?
I've never broken it down just for the district.
Do you feel as you have a shortage, or you could use more? I mean, I guess.
We spray as much as they'll give us. I mean, we got 2 crews. We're busy. There's not a shortage of chemical. We spray. When there's good weather, we're out spraying.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Mr. Stelling.
On the motion, but the other gentleman mentioned something about herbicide recommendations. Can property owners on the river spray their own property frontage?
Absolutely.
Okay, so they can find out from you what herbicide.
They can find out. We can
See, that
make
would definitely, be, in my
recommendations.
opinion, would be a big push along the river, especially in that Sam Houston area. There's a lot of really nice places out there, to make recommendations for the landowners to spray their own property. So.
Absolutely, and we give that information out as people call. A lot of folks do not realize that they can spray their own frontage.
I did not. So.
We just ask that, when we give you the recommended chemical, that you follow label instructions
Right,
for
exactly.
safety reasons.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on a resolution. Do we have any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. I think we're done. We thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Item number 4, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting an ordinance and/or amending existing ordinances, canceling the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit and establishing a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on Sarah Street located in Ward 4. We have a motion by Mr. Hassan and a second by Mr. Scott. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 5, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution urging the Housing, Transportation, and Infrastructure Committee to continue to reauthorize the federal highway and transit programs with continuance of funding for the federal off-system bridge program. We have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Hassan. We have a discussion, Mr. Spell.
Mr. Smart, is there a risk that this will not be reauthorized, or we just doing this for safekeeping?
Tim knows more about it than I do, but NACO requested that the local governing bodies get together and contact their senators, representatives, because yes, it is a definite. They left it out of the original bill for the federal bridge funding.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 6, advise that Calcasieu Parish was found to be in full compliance by the Louisiana Transportation and Development for the 2009 annual review, which will assure the parish's continued participation in the Federal Bridge Replacement Program through October 2010. Since that's just an advise, we need no action. Before we adjourn, I have a point of personal privilege with Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if Mr. Grimion is back there, and I wanted to point out Keisha Kilmer, who was in our audience. During Hurricane Rita, she did a tremendous job. If Keisha, let's see, Dick, is Keisha still here? Is Keisha still here? Okay. And yeah, I was just going to point out to the new jurors that Keisha was given 2 medals by 2 different generals for her effort during Hurricane Rita. She did a tremendous job for Calcasieu Parish. And now she's also working for the governor's office in the Homeland Security with the governor's office. But if you get a chance to meet Keisha and get her cell phone number, it would be proactive on your part because she did a great job for us in Hurricane Rita, and hopefully we won't have any use for her this year at all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn? So, we're adjourned.
The Agenda Committee meeting Thursday, October 29, 2009 will now come to order. The purpose of today's committee meeting is to formulate an agenda for the regular meeting of the police jury on November 5th. Entertain a motion to pull items 22 and 23.
Second.
And moved and second. Any discussion? Any objections? Motion carries. Item 22. Take appropriate action on the expiration of the term of Mr. Edward Peterson as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Waterworks District Number 2.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Trimmy and second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion carries. Item 23. Take appropriate action with the reference of expiration of the term of Mr. Jimmy Ballard as a member of the Board of Commissioners of the Benton Harbor and Terminal District.
Yes, I'd like to submit the names of Ms. Martha McClellan and Mr. Jimmy Ballard.
Okay. Two names, Ms. Martha McClellan
And Mr.
Ballard.
Jimmy Ballard.
Have been submitted.
Second.
Got a second on that motion? Okay. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion carries. I'd like to advise that, also point out that an attachment at the end of our report for item number 17 be taken home and read. We will be making a motion on that action at our November 5th meeting. And also, I'd like to recognize Mr. McMurray.
I've got one add-on, but I think we need to take 21. I believe 21 requires a recommendation. That would be the term Mr. Alvin Simmons.
Which one was that?
Sorry, Chairman Price, if I missed that one. Number 21, we do need a recommendation. I missed that.
Move to reappoint.
Second.
Okay. The motion and second to reappoint. Any discussion? Any objection? That motion carries.
The add-on that I was going to add, we're not able to confirm this until after the agendas were printed tonight. The State Office of Community Development Disaster Recovery Unit, the Hazard Mitigation Program, they have asked for the right to locate on the second floor of the Magnolia Building for a temporary period. They will be serving, I think there are like 13,000 homeowners who are eligible for some of those hazard mitigation grants, and they will be entertaining applications from those people. They have no money for office rent. They've asked us if they could locate there. We've identified an area on the second floor adjacent to where the State Fire Marshal is located, and for a temporary period of time, our recommendation is that we give them the opportunity to do that.
Recommendation of Mr. McMurray.
The motion and second. Any discussion? Any objection? Okay, motion carries. Mr. Scott?
Just a quick personal privilege. I'd just like to congratulate Les Farnham and Karen. They've been married 32 years today. That's why he had to hit the road. That's why he's gone already. Oh, there he is. You told me he was leaving. We'd have let you go.
True public service.
All right, well, we just want to congratulate Les.
Any other anniversaries? Any other discussion?
don't want to say nothing.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we'll adjourn.